Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here, and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. Grand final result. So this is it. Our 2019 Overwatch League season is over, and we have a new champion, a new team on top of the pile. The question is, would it be the Vancouver Titans or the San Francisco Shurk that would become known as the best team in the world? But hey, let's not rush, we have a lot to talk about. Leading into the action, we had an opening ceremony which this year would feature Zed as the headlining act, and may I say, what a massive improvement it was on what we saw last season, which, if you have somehow forgotten, was DJ Khaled. The performance that Zed gave really made it feel like an opening ceremony for a grand final and gave everyone the hype needed before the big match. Now, talking of the big match, if you had forgotten the route to the final, let's go over it once more. Vancouver Titans entered the playoffs as our number 1 seed, having been on top of the league standings all season. The San Francisco Shurk came into the playoffs as number 3 seed behind the New York Excelsior, only due to the fact that the Shurk were in the same division as the Titans, and so Excelsior took the 2nd seed after winning the Atlantic Division. The Shurk did in fact finish 2nd in the league standings. The Titans would start off their playoff campaign against the Seoul Dynasty, winning 4-2, whereas the Shurk would start off their playoffs with a 4-3 surprising loss to an on-form Atlanta Reign side. The Titans would continue their run through the winners bracket, beating the LA Gladiators 4-2 and then the New York Excelsior 4-3 to reach the grand final without registering a loss. The San Francisco Shurk, however, found themselves in the losers bracket after their loss to the Reign and were one bad game away from going home. This would act as fuel though, as they would rip through the losers bracket, knocking out 2018 champions London Spitfire, the LA Gladiators, Hangzhou Spark, and NYXL, dominating all the games with a convincing 4-0 scoreline. Quite a phenomenal run, and it left us asking the question, could anyone stop this rampant Shurk team? Into the grand final we head then, with the first of 4 maps taking home that precious trophy and the crown of best Overwatch team in the world. Our first map will be on Lijiang Tower, and the hype introduction from Golden Boy that told us that the teams would be what we expected, with both enigmatic tank players Super and Bumper not featuring. The Titans had not lost on control all through these playoffs, and it was a vital win condition for them here, so they wanted to get a good start against this scary Shurk side. This was not to be though, as the Titans come out on Control Center with a Brigitte Lucio support line, which caused a surprise for many, including Uber and Mr. X in the commentary booth. This support duo was never going to work. With so little healing output, they were always going to come up short, and that they did. With the first control going over to the Shurk, they were always going to take advantage of this compositional mismatch. This early pick, though, from the Titans did show us that perhaps they were scared enough of Sinatra's Doomfist that they were prepared to run something very unconventional to try and shut him down. Twilight would very quickly switch off of the Brigitte and onto the Moira, but by this time the ult economy was in the Shurk's favour, and their ability to use this to their advantage would allow them to see out the first point. On to Night Market then. And we had got the silly Brigitte business out of the way for the Titans, and this time they would run out with the Moira from the very beginning. And this would pay dividends. This time the Titans would get first control and build up a big percentage lead before the Shurk would ever be able to get on the board. Looking good for the Titans at this point, but things would soon go sour, as they would be unable to retake the point and hold it without the Shurk striking back immediately with clutch plays. We saw a lot of good combos from both sides, using the Orisa Holt and the Doomfist Meteor Strike to get some great kills, including a 4K for Haxel. But this would not be good enough for the Titans, as the Shurk would run it back Night Market and take the first map 2-0. This was already a disaster for the Titans, as they had lost their control map advantage, and not only that, Lijiang Tower was their map pick, so not only had they lost on their favoured map type, but they'd also lost on their map they chose. Where would they go from here to try and find an answer for the Shurk? For map 2, the Titans would take us to Iconworld, which was a bit of a surprise to me, as I thought the Titans might have favoured Numbani, but hey, both teams have good records on all the maps, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. One surprise was that the substitutions had changed the look of the DPS on the side of the Shurk, as out went Sinatra and Striker, in come Rascal and Architect. 2 players that we only usually see on escort maps, so this caught a lot of people off guard. The question is, why would the Shurk do this for this map? Well, it's because they want to run the Bastion pirate ship comp that we've seen during these playoffs, especially from the NYXL. The Shurk would pair it with a pharmacy combo, providing a Vancouver Titans with a lot of questions to answer. What was even more surprising is that they ran it to take the payload as well as move it. This move from the Shurk hit the Titans for 6, and they wouldn't be able to recover the defense with the Shurk completing the map with a considerable amount of time in the time bank. Now the Titans would have to match this if they wanted any chance of tying up the series heading into the break. They actually managed to do this. With great coordination on the attack, they were able to crumble the Bastion bunker defense for the Shurk, and again this defense would never really recover, with the Titans finishing the map with only 2 seconds less than the Shurk. A very good showing from both teams on this map. On to the second round of attacks then. The Titans would go first as they had a slightly smaller time bank. They would struggle this time with Twilight being caught out on the first push away from his team. This lost the Titans valuable time and they would never recover, only managing to put a tick on the board, but at least they had a goal to work to on the defense. The Titans hold on defense very well, with a chaotic second to last fight, which would throw everything up into the air. And when it came to the last fight, the clutch of the Shurk once again reared its head, and they managed to take the map with a very little time left. They had clutched it once again despite the questionable ult usage on their second attack. They would go up 2-0 in the series. The Titans were in serious trouble heading into the break. After the break, it would be Vancouver's map pick once again, and they would this time take us to Temple of Anubis, which I think a lot of people might have predicted. This would allow Hacksaw to play the Genji if he wanted to. The problem with this was that the meta we are currently in really doesn't favour that, and with the Shurk opting to play Reaper or Mei and Doomfist, Genji wasn't going to get much done, and so Hacksaw would have to stick to the Doomfist, and boy would it pay off. The Titans managed to take the first point in really quick fashion, giving themselves over 5 minutes to try and take the second point. The second point would be a much harder than the first to make progress on, but the Titans would get it done eventually with about 1.5 minutes in the time bank. Finally, the Titans were showing us a bit of bite, and now it was the Shurk's turn to provide an answer, and boy did it take a long time for that answer to arrive. But eventually, the Shurk managed to take the first point in overtime after a great defense for the Titans. All Vancouver had to do was to replicate this one on the second point, and they would be able to take the map. Unfortunately, the Shurk had other ideas. The snowball was in full motion as they rolled onto the second point and took it very efficiently, giving themselves more time in the time bank than the Vancouver Titans could achieve. Things had flipped on the Titans. It was now Vancouver who were under mounting pressure as they had to win this map or the Shurk would go on to the match point very early in this series. The Titans do manage to take the first point on their second attack, but it's a slow burner this one, and the second point would prove too much to ask for the Titans as they would not be able to get a slither of progress on that one. This gave the Shurk a clear win condition, and it's almost like sharks smelling blood in the water. They pounce. They sweep through the Titans' initial defense on A, completely different to what happened on the first attack, and this gave them enough time to breeze their way onto the second point and get that one tick of progress they would need to go up 3-0 in the series and on to match point. It was now looking like a very quick grand final. Okay then, it's do or die time for the Titans. They have to win this map or their dreams of the Overwatch League title were gone for this year. They would take us to Watchpoint Gibraltar, a problematic map as the Shurk would bring back the Bastion pirate ship comp that Vancouver had so much difficulty with during these playoffs. Now let me tell you, the sails on the good ship Shurk are mighty strong and can take a good battering before any holes start to show. This meant that the pirate ship was becoming very difficult for the Titans to stop, and although they would dislodge it for a brief moment every now and then, it would ultimately see the Shurk finish the map with a good amount of time in the time bank, just as they did on Iconwald. Crunch time for the Titans then. Finish the map, or it's all over. Again, they would have to play into that strong Bastion defense from the Shurk, which would whittle a lot of time off the clock for the Titans, as they almost found themselves full held. But they would be able to clutch out the fight and get the first point. Another slow push would see them get the second point. 1 point left to take to keep themselves in it. They had a decent enough amount of time to get it to the third point, but the Shurk managed to find a foothold on their defense, and once that happens, it can become very difficult to break this Shurk team down. The Titans would be able to get it to just before the third point though, but they would not have enough in the tank to actually secure that third point, meaning the Shurk defense had held strong and got them that 4-0 that they were desperately looking for. The San Francisco Shurk are your 2019 Overwatch League Champions, and they have done it in style, not dropping a single map since the loss in the first round of the playoffs against the Atlanta Reign. These 4-0s were against very good teams, let's remember. They swept the 2018 champions London, the Gladiators, a very impressive NYXL side, and of course they 4-0'd the Titans, which I don't think anyone would have predicted. this Shurk side have definitely earned their title as the best Overwatch team in the world over the course of this season, setting many records that are going to be very hard to beat. As for the Titans, this will be massively disappointing to them, as they did want to finish that runaway story with a bang. Ultimately, it was not to be, but as a first season in the league, they have to be proud of their achievements. They are by far the highest finishers out of the expansion teams who entered this season, and have lived up to the hype that was built around them coming from Korea, which is more than can be said for Lunatic High when they became Seoul Dynasty. Sorry, Seoul fans. Personally, I am disappointed that we didn't get a lengthy grand final that went all the way to 7 if not 8 maps, but the Shurk were just too good, man, and I had a fear this might happen when we saw the Shurk tearing up the losers bracket. They were playing with that anger and hunger for revenge, and when they play like that, it's almost impossible to stop them. Almost. In terms of the production, this grand final was much better than last year, with all the hype, advertising and opening ceremony. Also to note viewer figures. The main Twitch broadcast hit a high of 260,000 viewers, which is fantastic and was constantly higher than the rival CSGO ESL 1 grand final broadcast that was on at the same time, so big congratulations to Blizzard and the Overwatch League for that. The Overwatch League has a rest now until the new year, but I am not quite finished yet with the 2019 season of the Overwatch League, as I will be back with an overall season review and a look back at each team's individual season to see where it went wrong or right, and how they can improve ahead of the 2020 season. If you are missing some pro-level Overwatch, then have no fear, as the Overwatch Contenders Gauntlet is coming in October, where you will see teams like Runaway and Owl Academy teams in action, and I will have a preview of that coming very soon. Also, we'll have the Overwatch World Cup in early November at BlizzCon, so I'll be doing build up to that as well. But this is it for the regular Overwatch League roundups for the 2019 season. It has been an absolute pleasure to do this for a second year in a row, and I am looking forward to the 2020 season. But, for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.